couple of times addressing the infrastructure and the deficiencies with the infrastructure. So would it be fair to say that your overall policy would be no more big projects, let's fix what we've got?
You know, I really do feel that with limited resources, we have to understand that when you see the kinds of problems that we faced last year with the bridge, we have to reinvigorate our commitment to keeping what we have strong and healthy before we build new.
So where does that put the Circ Highway?
Well, you know, we've been obviously talking about the Circ, and as you know, there are developments unfolding there, seems like almost every week. What I would like to do as governor is to bring together the parties who have so badly wanted the Circ to be built and figure out a realistic, tangible approach to the Circ. I've watched governors that I served with, from Governors Snelling, Cunin, Dean, and Douglas, all commit to getting the Circ built, and it hasn't been built yet. So I think we need to have a Circ conversation, and I intend to ask both the Secretary, the Deputy Secretary, and others to help bring that conversation together so that we can figure out the best way to proceed.
So are you committed to having it built as well?
You know, I think I'm not going to comment on what I'm committed to. What I'm committed to is ending the era where governors try their best to get something built that never gets built, and figure out what we need, what makes sense, and how we get there. I would like to have a realistic plan for the Circ, not one that endlessly never happens.
How about interstate exits? Brian, you've been supportive generally of the notion of something in Chittenden County. Your comments before the transportation projects will be geared toward job development. Is that to say that you'll look favorably on that sort of an addition that would service the airport?
Well, I mean, there's two issues here, and one of them is clear, and that is that we need to get airport traffic, Burlington airport traffic off Route 2. And that everybody agrees on that. And right now there's a process in place to find the best way to do that. One of the proposals is the exit that you referenced. Now, with a broader perspective, I'll be looking at all projects that are currently being considered at any level, whether it's at the MPO or the agency, to see how they come out in terms of priority and funding.
Can you talk briefly about I know you've talked about the airport a lot in the last couple of years, and it's growing, seeing what a bigger increase or smaller decrease, I can't remember, of traffic as most other airports. What shape are you leaving that in, and how did that sort of play into your decision to take this?
Well, the last couple of years have been difficult for aviation in general in the country, but actually Burlington Airport has done pretty well. We did have a tough 18 months, but we didn't have double-digit decreases in passengers like many airports. And the last 3 months, we've actually seen increases. So I think we've made a ground point.
Did the bond troubles and the BT problem, did anything push you out the door, in other words, or make it less?
Oh, no, not at all. I really enjoyed the job. I really enjoyed my 5 years there. It's a great place to be, but this is a very exciting opportunity in the new administration, and that's why I'm making the move, and that's the only reason.
You mentioned, Governor-elect, climate change, also the infrastructure. Senator Mazza said you don't have the federal stimulus money anymore that really pumped a lot of money into the state and made a lot of paving projects possible. How are you going to get your goals accomplished with the limited resources that you have?
Well, I think that we're going to have to be really creative. And when you look at the challenges that we're facing, not only in the transportation budget, but in the general fund budget, it's a similar story. We're going to have to be much smarter about the way we allocate resources and decide what our priorities are. And one of the things that I'm going to do as governor is not make promises about new projects that can't be kept. We have crumbling bridges. 30% of our bridges need replacing. We know that that's got to be a priority. And then as we make commitments to new projects, we've got to make sure that we first have rebuilt the infrastructure we have. So I'm just saying, let's be wiser, let's be smarter, and let's build to scale. And one of the challenges, I think, of the last many years that we've learned is that Vermont has a roadway imprint that doesn't necessarily match what the rest of the country needs. We want to have vital downtowns where we try to keep the trucks out of our downtowns and keep the automobiles in our downtowns. That's a challenge that we've made some progress on recently with the temporary waiver to allow heavier trucks on the interstate. That's made a big difference to many of our downtowns. But my point is this, our challenges are different than many other states. We don't have to build big, we have to build smart, and that's what we're going to do.
I want to ask about rail. What do you see as the future of rail? I mean, people talk for years about a Bennington, Burlington train, or would you see any hope for a resurgence of the Champlain Flyer, for instance, or where are we going with rail?
You know, I was down at the, what I call baby governor school, the NGA's governor training, and talked to a number of the governor-elects about rail. And I think there's a real potential to work together with the other New England governors to ensure that both passenger and freight rail have a bigger presence in our lives. We have to do it. When we talk about climate change and the imperative to change the way we burn fossil fuels, rail is going to be a huge player in the transformation to a cleaner transportation system. So, I know there's been tension between the east and the west sides of Vermont. I am committed to rail up through Bennington. I would like very much to work together with our friends in Canada to improve the relationship there so that we can eventually get the sector back to Montpelier. I think that's really important to our rail future. I spoke with Lieutenant Governor Brian Doobie this morning. He has great relationships with Canadians. He's agreed to help us on many fronts there in terms of energy and rail. We're going to work together to try to get it done.
Your new deputy has been a big proponent of bonding for transportation in the past. Do you see any opportunity for something like that?
Well, I think there's a difference often between a legislative role and having to be an executive role of running state government. And I'm going to adjust to that. I'm sure that the Deputy Secretary of Transportation will too. We've got to live within our means and obviously keep our bond rating strong and healthy. But I think we've all entertained the bonding discussion, and we'll look at it where it's fiscally prudent.
Can you explain a little more what you're asking Brian to do again?
Well, I'd asked Brian Brian has kindly offered, and I've accepted his generous offer to lead our team on a delegation to Canada to talk about both energy and jobs-related issues, and rail will be a part of that.
When is that?
Well, we haven't
Just
scheduled it. The question is, will it happen, before I actually become governor, sworn as governor, or whether it happen after. But Brian's built really good relationships with our Canadian neighbors, and I've asked him to help us in that transition, and he's kindly agreed to do so.
Would you consider strategic disinvestment in existing transportation infrastructure as you look to find ways to fund some of these newer initiatives that you're talking about?
Well, can you define what you mean by that?
I mean, are there going to be cases where there's a bridge that needs work and you decide, look, it doesn't make sense for us to continue pouring millions of dollars into this bridge or this road, let's shut it down, use the money for something that we think is more important?
We're going to consider all options necessary to live within our means and keep our transportation infrastructure strong and healthy. And, I don't think that you can underestimate this challenge. We're going to work closely with the federal delegation to try and ensure that we get as much federal help as we can as we confront this. The interstate highway system, as you know, was built when most of us around these mics, with the exception of Sue, were young people. And it's not just Vermont's system that's feeling the pain of old age. It's happening across the country. So I think as we talk with our federal delegation about where they should allocate resources, I can tell you as one governor, I'm going to be saying, if you continue to spend on military spending the way we have in the past, And as a result, we don't reinvest dollars, taxpayer dollars on a federal level in rail and transportation infrastructure. We're gonna have a transportation infrastructure that crumbles before our eyes. They need to reorganize their priorities down there, and as governor, I'm gonna help to ensure that we carry that message.
Does that mean there will be an influx in funding for public transit in general in Vermont? Are you going to invest? Because right now, it's a really small proportion of
Right,
the
it
state's
is.
expenditures.
And we understand that with public transit in Vermont, we have some special challenges other states don't face, which is that we have to get there by car generally. A lot of us live in rural areas, and therefore, the public transit solutions aren't as simple as they are in areas that have more urban populations. So we'll continue on the course that we've been on, which is to ensure that we have a strong public transportation infrastructure within our urban areas, but we're gonna have to find more creative ways to deal with those that don't and won't live in urban areas. And I'll use my own parents as an example. 85 years old, living on the top of the end of a dirt road. And when I say to them, we want you to grow old gracefully, where are you planning to do that? They say right here. And there's no way you're gonna run a bus out to where they live. So I think one of the strengths of bringing Sue Minner on this job is she's a planner. She got her master's in planning from MIT. She has a great vision to give us ideas about how to start to tackle these challenges, but we're gonna think creatively.
How about any creative revenue ideas? Anything from toll booths to increasing diesel tax or anything like that?
Well, the revenue discussion, I think, is good. We've asked the tax, as you know, this 3-person tax committee to come back to us with recommendations about how we can grow wealth and grow jobs in Vermont by reinventing our tax structure. They're gonna be looking at transportation dollars as well. I don't think it's any secret that right now, the current tax structure in Vermont and the other 49 states, which is primarily driven by a gas tax, is going to be a dwindling resource as we hope, accomplish our goal of using less oil. So we have a dual challenge. While we want to make sure that we have enough revenue to rebuild our roads and bridges, we also want people to use less oil. All 50 states face that challenge. We'd love to be a part of finding a solution.